I welcome you to this section whereby we are going to focus on authentication and authorization. When building real-world applications, you cannot do away with authentication and authorization. If you are new to backend development, this concept is really hard, but trust me, I'm going to break it down and move step by step as we move on in this course. And I'm going to explain every bit of code that I'm going to write. Before we get into it, let's understand the differences between authentication and authorization. And my tip for you is that take some notes as you move on in this course and try to share what you've learned or how you understand some concept to others. Or you can share what you've learned inside our Facebook group or inside our Discord channel. Before we get into the actual concept, let's understand the differences between authentication and authorization. These two concepts are different. So what are the differences? Authentication is a process of verifying who you are, while authorization is the process of verifying what you are allowed to do. Imagine you are entering in a nightclub. Showing your ID to the bouncer is authentication. And the wristband they give you that allows you to buy drinks is the authorization. Authentication is all about verifying the identity of a user, device, or system. And this process often involves a username and password, but can include any number of methods like OTPs, and that is one-time passwords, smart cards, or even biometric verification. Authorization, on the other hand, comes into play after authentication and deals with permissions and privileges. It determines what resources the authenticated entity has access to and what they can do with those resources. This is often managed through roles, permissions, or claims stored in tokens or databases. Let's see this analog. Authentication is like the cover charge and ID check at the entrance of a club. They just want to make sure you are legit and supposed to be there. Authorization is like the different wristbands they give you inside. That lets you into VIP areas or lets you buy alcohol. One gets you in the door, the other dictates what can do once you are inside. Now let's see this picture. Let's take it that this is the authentication endpoint and this is the authorization endpoint. Over here, let's say that this is our application. And this user wants to use our application. And before using the application, we need to identify who you are. In case you are legible, then the next step is that after you have been authenticated, what you can do after you have logged in. And that is what we call authorization. Whether you can access some features in the application or not. And I believe sometimes you've seen such scenarios before. For example, if you try to access some resources, it says that admin only, or you are not allowed. This is because of the authorization. So let's see when to use this. For authentication, this is needed whenever you have a system that restricts access to certain users. For example, include logging into your email, accessing your bank account online, and the rest. And for authorization, it is important when you have different levels of access or permissions in a system. For instance, in a company's internal portal, not everyone should be able to access the HR records or financial data. Now, let's observe these practices. For authentication, always use secure channels, and that is HTTPS, for transmitting authentication data. And try to implement multi-factor authentication for added security. And passwords should be stored in hashed format. And for authorization, apply the principle of least privilege. And that is, give users the permissions they needed. And also regularly audit permissions and roles to ensure they are up to date. And use role-based or claims-based authorization for better maintainability. So in short, authentication and authorization, while related, they serve different purposes. Authentication verifies who a user is, while authorization determines what a user can do. Both are crucial for the security and functionality of applications and often work in tandem to protect resources and data. In the next video, we will see how authentication flow works. Let's continue in the next video.